What's up, everybody? Maine Fly Guys here with another tutorial. In honor of all the hexes that are hatching in Maine, I figured I'd show you how I tie my hex hatch or green drake, whatever you want to call it. This is a size 12 Daiichi curved 1270. To start, I'm going to start at the back with the tail here. I like the tail to be about as long as the body. The tail is just fibers taken from an olive saddle hackle, so it's just taken from about the base. They have a nice thick look to them, and it also helps bulk up the body a little bit. Now these hexes, you know, these hex hatches or green drakes, they're big. They're big and they're meaty, and you want your fly to look the same, to have that same big meaty feel. So anytime you can bulk up the body a little bit on these while keeping that nice taper, the better. So I go right about to the curve. You don't want to pull down too tightly because I like my tail to kind of stay together, you know, but in the water it will sort of flay out. So the next step I do is come in with some extra thin gold wire. This is so light you don't have to worry about it knocking down your fly. It's so small. Just with a little tiny bit of floating, this will do just fine. So all I do is wrap in the back side of it just to tie it in, and then I'm going to come in with my body, which is a stripped quill. Here, this is the same feather that I took the tail fibers from. It has this beautiful kind of olive, almost yellow. It's kind of hard to describe, but it's exactly the color of the hexes that we have here in Maine. I mean, it's really a good match. So I just wrap upward. Now you don't need a great taper, because if you've ever seen these hexes that are hatching in Maine, they don't have this like crazy taper to their body. They basically are the same width. I mean, they got a teeny tiny taper, which maybe you want to incorporate, which here I'll do just a really small taper. But I wouldn't worry too much about it. They're just thicker. So you see how I have a pretty bulky body going right now? You want it to be that thick, that nice thickness. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna start wrapping the body. And what I'm actually gonna do is put a little half hitch in here, just so I don't have to worry about my thread. Just start wrapping the body with the quill. Now if you're going all natural, au naturel, then you're going to want to be careful, because the quill is incredibly delicate to start. It's very delicate to start, and the wraps are very small. So be careful not to clip the hook. They don't need to be perfect, you know, but the tighter the better it looks. So just go very slow, keeping tension. This is actually quite durable in a fish's mouth. It doesn't break as much as you think it would after handling it. You're like, oh my god, I'm gonna catch one fish and this is gonna be broke, but I promise you it won't. So the further down you go, the thicker the quill becomes, and eventually it will get very thick. When you get to the very thick part, that's about all she wrote, so you can't really go any further. Just go slow though, because the color will start to change, and it kind of brings out a cool feature of the body. And you'll get towards the end and you'll be like, oh no, I'm gonna run out of room, but I promise you will not. Because these wraps are so much thicker than the previous ones that they take up a lot more space. So Come on, there we go. So here I'm coming up on my final wraps. Just making sure they're tight, making sure they're uniform. And then it gets pretty stiff, so I'm going to lock it in right there. I want to pull it a little less thread because we're going to cover that up. And you see I have a little piece sticking out. Don't worry, because we're going to cover that all up. So once you're got it trapped, you can go ahead and cover it, and you can see it's just this beautiful olive, kind of almost has a yellow tint in it. Now the hexes here have definitely some striation, which is where the ribbing is going to come in, and I'm going to do just open wraps, maybe 3 or 4 of them. That first wrap was a little, you don't want it to be too far apart, but there we go. And this ribbing, 1, it will help the body stay intact, and 2, it just adds a little bit more detail, adds a little more color to it, and it just looks a little more natural. Alright, so we got that in. Get a little helicopter. Now, what we're going to do is just secure it, make sure everything's in there nice and tight. We are going to add a little of this olive dubbing. This is microfine dry blue winged olive dubbing, but it's a great olivey color that kind of matches that green drake or that hex hatch. You do not need a lot. Like, you don't need a lot. Took me a long time to figure that out, that you really don't need a lot of this to make it go a long way. So less is better. This is all you really want, is just a thin rope. And I just make a little ball there. You're just going to make a little tiny ball, and then right out front of that ball we're going to put in our hackle that we're going to put in. So I have just 2. These are from 2 capes. This isn't your whiting hackle, so it's not quite as pretty, but it's an olive and a brown. Alright, and so what I'm going to do is tie that in right after that ball. Tie those in together, working back towards the ball, and then I'm going to snip it. Snip those ends, just lock them into place. And the drakes, these huge mayflies, they're probably most notable for one thing, and that's this big wing. And so what I have here is CDC in gray and white. And all I'm going to do is get it so that it's sticking up. And so I've put them together, and I'm going to tie them in sort of laying down, facing backwards. And then when I get to that dubbing ball that we made, I'm going to take all the fibers, I'm going to pull them forward, and I'm going to try to get it to stand straight up. Now you can go around the base if you want to make it sort of tighter, standing straight up, but I don't want mine to be particularly tight. So then I'm going to go forward, just make sure you trim the edges. Be careful not to crowd the eye. What a great opportunity this is to crowd the eye right here. So now what we have, here we go, is a little dubbing ball, our poof of a wing, which I'm going to trim right now, and I trim it at a downward angle. I'll do this so you guys can see it. I trim it at a downward angle like so, because if you look at a mayfly wing, it's tallest at the top and then sort of works its way back. The reason I do this before I wrap my hackle is because I don't want to clip any of my hackle. So I'm going to go down, and it's a pretty big wing. So feel free to leave it pretty bushy. Okay, so now I'm going to go to the front, and again, be careful to don't crowd your eye. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap both of these at the same time. So Alright, so I got both my hackle feathers had a little malfunction there, apologize. And what we're going to do is I'm going to wrap them once behind. Oops, make sure you got a good grip on both of them though, don't want them slipping out. So I'm going to do one wrap behind. Make sure not to trap any of your wing fibers there. One behind, and then 2 or 3. Stay together for me. There we go. 2 or 3 out front, and this looks like it's going to be a 3 right here. Alright. So that looks pretty decent. So I'm going to trap in both of my feathers here. Don't be worried about trapping a few fibers laying forward. We can always take care of those after. See, like I've trapped, a few of these fibers. Not a huge deal. Okay, so here we go. We have a beautiful bushy green drake, and I'm just going to clean up the front here, pull all those fibers back, make yourself a nice little head. See that? Nice clean head. And I'm going to whip finish. You can throw in some half hitches if you want, if you don't want to trap any fibers, but there we go. And so now what I'll do is I'll just come through, pick off any little fibers that I don't like. But there you have a really, really effective green drake pattern that kills it this time of year, especially with all the mayflies buzzing around on ponds and stuff. So great pond pattern, great pattern to fish this time of year, simple and effective and very, very durable. So thank you for watching. If you want to see more fishy business, check us out on Instagram. Please subscribe to us, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks.